Just get out of the house and figure it out, old man. You're just a burden here. That sentence ripped through the living room air, bouncing off the walls that Eleanor and I had painted with our own hands 40 years ago. I froze, not even recognizing my own son's voice. It sounded cold, flat, empty, like a cell door slamming shut behind a prisoner. My name is Arthur Miller. I'm 72 years old, a retired high school English teacher, 30 years teaching literature, 43 as a husband, and a lifetime as a father. But it only took 3 sentences from my son for all those titles to just evaporate. Rob didn't look at me while he spoke. He was checking something on his phone, while his wife Vanessa stood next to him with her arms crossed. You should find a nice, quiet place to rest, Arthur. This house is too big, too many stairs, and too many memories, she said, her voice sweet as honey, but with a look as hard as marble. I looked around. Our wedding photo wasn't on the wall anymore. Eleanor's potted plants had been moved to the porch. Everything inside my home was now labeled as theirs. I opened my mouth, only to hear my own voice tremble. This house was your mother's and mine, Rob smirked, a mix of mockery and contempt. No, Dad, you're wrong. According to Mom's will, everything belongs to me. I just let you stay here out of pity, but that's over. My heart seized. I wanted to laugh, to think it was some terrible joke, but in his eyes there wasn't a flicker of the boy whose hand I once held walking down the street. There was only the coldness of a victor. Vanessa placed a printed document on the table. Legal papers, she called them. Just sign here to change the utilities. We'll take care of getting you a room at the nursing home. You'll have company your own age. You won't be alone. You won't be alone. Those words sparked a bitter laugh inside me. I had taught thousands of students about honesty, loyalty, and family. And yet, at the end of my life, it was my own son who was teaching me the final lesson. Sometimes, love doesn't die from malice, but from convenience. I went into my room and opened the closet. A few old shirts, some textbooks, the watch Eleanor gave me for our 20th anniversary. I put everything into 2 suitcases. Rob stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, his voice as cold as metal. Be gone by morning, Dad. I've got things to do. Don't make me say it again. When the door closed behind me, I heard Vanessa's muffled laugh and my son's footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. That echo hit my mind like a drum of betrayal. I didn't cry. I just felt a deep emptiness. Eleanor used to tell me, if everything falls apart one day, remember, dignity is the last roof we have left. That night, I walked out onto the street with 2 suitcases and nowhere to go. The rain began to fall, soft as a goodbye. I looked up at the gray Pasadena sky and whispered, Honey, I think they just stole our house, but I'm going to get it back, not for the walls or the roof, but for the memories that still live in them. And so, my journey began. A journey not to recover property, but to recover the meaning of being a father. Eleanor's funeral was held on a lead-gray morning. It was drizzling, fine drops falling on the old shingles as the church bells chimed. I stood by the casket, listening to the priest read the prayers as if he were saying my own name. To one side, Rob shook hands with the efficiency of a successful businessman, and Vanessa poured into a tight black dress, her makeup so perfect that even the tears, if any fell, seemed calculated not to smudge her lipstick. Eleanor left suddenly, a heart attack in her sleep. She left no last words, just a serene smile in the photo placed on the casket. 43 years together, and in the end, I didn't even get to say goodbye. They say death is a rest, but for me, it was just a booming void. Rob came over and put a hand on my shoulder. Dad, I know this loss is hard, but you can't stay in that house. Too many memories. They'll only hurt you. His voice was soft, the kind you use to calm a child. I wanted to believe him, but there was something different in his eyes. A cold glint, calculating. After the burial, my house grew empty. Old friends came to offer condolences and left with the promise to call soon. Nobody called. Only Rob came back a few times, always with Vanessa, always bringing glossy brochures. Look, Dad, he'd say, this assisted living place in Palm Springs has a pool, private nurses, activities. Vanessa would chime in. You'll have friends your own age there. You won't be alone. You won't have to worry about a thing. Rob and I will visit every week. Every week. They said it like I was a child who needed minders. I would nod without arguing, silently pouring coffee. The aroma of cinnamon filled the air, but no one noticed. The kitchen, which had been the source of Eleanor's biggest laughs, was now just the sound of a spoon clinking against a cup. One afternoon, Rob sat across from me at the dining room table. "Dad," he said, "have you thought about selling the house? It's old, and the land in this part of Pasadena is worth a fortune now." "Sell it for what?" I asked. He smiled. "So you have money to relax, I can help you manage it. I'm good at these things." I looked at him, hair slicked back, a gleaming watch. I remembered the 10-year-old boy who was afraid of the dark. Now, he was the darkness spreading over my life. That night, I stood on the porch, listening to the sound of his car engine fading away. I felt something strange, like when you see the sky fill with clouds before a storm. Eleanor used to say, "People don't change because of age. They change because of ambition." I think I finally understood. I went inside and sat at the desk. In the drawer, there was still a photo from our first year in this house. My hair still black, Eleanor smiling, radiant, little Rob between us. I ran my hand over her face in the picture. "Honey," I whispered, "it looks like the storms are back. But I can still hear your voice in this house, and as long as that voice is here, I'm not leaving." Outside, the wind began to pick up. The sky was preparing for the first rain of the season, and I, unaware that the real storm, was already waiting for me inside my own family. A few weeks after the funeral, the house began to change in silence. There was no more laughter, no smell of the cinnamon rolls Eleanor used to make every Sunday morning. There was only the sound of the door opening and the footsteps of my son and his wife at unexpected hours. They came more often, always with the same excuse. "We came to see you, Dad." But every visit ended with that soft advice wrapped in the shiny paper of feigned concern. "Dad, at your age, what you need is comfort, not responsibilities," Rob would say, reviewing contracts on his tablet. "Sell this house and go to that place I found. They treat seniors like they're at a hotel, meals, activities, nurses." Vanessa would add, with a sweetness so exaggerated it seemed fake, "You'll have friends. You won't be alone. This house just makes you remember sad things." I wouldn't answer. I'd just look out the window toward the table where Eleanor used to sit and mend my shirts. The sunlight was still golden, but it didn't feel warm anymore. I was beginning to understand. They didn't want to help me live better. They wanted me to fade away quietly. That day, I opened the closet to get my coat and noticed the drawer was too tidy, much more than I ever kept it. On top was a new stack of papers, property documents, copies of the house title. I'd never put them there. A chill ran down my spine. "Dad, I just organized it for you," Rob said, appearing behind me, that smile plastered on like a mask. I nodded without saying anything. But I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake listening to the ticking of the clock, realizing that the house, once a refuge, was now a strange place where someone was putting their hands into every corner of my life. The next morning, I went to my usual coffee shop on the corner. The owner, Sal, looked at me and asked, "Haven't seen Mrs. Miller in a while. How's her health?" I didn't know what to say. I just answered softly, "She's gone." Sal sighed and poured me more coffee. "Then you take good care of your things, especially your papers. You never know with people these days." I gave a small smile, but inside I heard a little click, as if Eleanor was whispering to me, "Listen to him, he's warning you." That night, Rob sent me a text. "Dad, someone's coming by to see the house tomorrow. Just an appraisal. Don't worry. Don't worry." 3 words that worried me more than anything. I remembered my years as a teacher telling my students, "The most dangerous thing is when a lie starts to call itself by a pretty name." Now I was living inside that lesson. I opened the small drawer where Eleanor kept her letters. Among the old photos, I found a pale yellow envelope I had never seen before. The handwriting was hers, clear and firm. "If you're reading this letter, it means I'm gone. Remember, there are things I'm leaving behind that aren't just walls and a roof." I sat still for a long time, my heart racing. That letter felt like a warning from far away. And for the first time, I felt clearly that Eleanor was still here. Not in body, but in that intuition of someone who knew me better than I knew myself. Section repeated in original. Eleanor's funeral was held on a lead-gray morning. It was drizzling, fine drops falling on the old shingles as the church bells chimed. I stood by the casket listening to the priest read the prayers as if he were saying my own name. To one side, Rob shook hands with the efficiency of a successful businessman, and Vanessa poured into a tight black dress, her makeup so perfect that even the tears, if any fell, seemed calculated not to smudge her lipstick. Eleanor left suddenly, a heart attack in her sleep. She left no last words, just a serene smile in the photo placed on the casket. 43 years together, and in the end, I didn't even get to say goodbye. They say death is a rest, but for me, it was just a booming void. Rob came over and put a hand on my shoulder. "Dad, I know this loss is hard, but you can't stay in that house. Too many memories. They'll only hurt you." His voice was soft, the kind you use to calm a child. I wanted to believe him, but there was something different in his eyes, a cold glint, calculating. After the burial, my house grew empty. Old friends came to offer condolences and left with the promise to call soon. Nobody called, only Rob came back a few times, always with Vanessa, always bringing glossy brochures. "Look, Dad," he'd say, "this assisted living place in Palm Springs has a pool, private nurses, activities." Vanessa would chime in. "You'll have friends your own age there. You won't be alone. You won't have to worry about a thing. Rob and I will visit every week." Every week. They said it like I was a child who needed minders. I would nod without arguing, silently pouring coffee. The aroma of cinnamon filled the air, but no one noticed. The kitchen, which had been the source of Eleanor's biggest laughs, was now just the sound of a spoon clinking against a cup. One afternoon, Rob sat across from me at the dining room table. "Dad," he said, "have you thought about selling the house? It's old, and the land in this part of Pasadena is worth a fortune now." "Sell it for what?" I asked. He smiled. "So you have money to relax. I can help you manage it. I'm good at these things." I looked at him, hair slicked back, a gleaming watch. I remembered the 10-year-old boy who was afraid of the dark. Now, he was the darkness spreading over my life. That night, I stood on the porch, listening to the sound of his car engine fading away. I felt something strange, like when you see the sky fill with clouds before a storm. Eleanor used to say, "People don't change because of age. They change because of ambition." I think I finally understood. I went inside and sat at the desk. In the drawer, there was still a photo from our first year in this house, my hair still black, Eleanor smiling, radiant, little Rob between us. I ran my hand over her face in the picture. "Honey," I whispered, "it looks like the storms are back. But I can still hear your voice in this house. And as long as that voice is here, I'm not leaving." Outside, the wind began to pick up. The sky was preparing for the first rain of the season, and I, unaware that the real storm, was already waiting for me inside my own family. Section repeated in original. A few weeks after the funeral, the house began to change in silence. There was no more laughter, no smell of the cinnamon rolls Eleanor used to make every Sunday morning. There was only the sound of the door opening and the footsteps of my son and his wife at unexpected hours. They came more often, always with the same excuse. "We came to see you, Dad." But every visit ended with that soft advice, wrapped in the shiny paper of feigned concern. "Dad, at your age, what you need is comfort, not responsibilities," Rob would say, reviewing contracts on his tablet. "Sell this house and go to that place I found. They treat seniors like they're at a hotel, meals, activities, nurses." Vanessa would add, with a sweetness so exaggerated it seemed fake. "You'll have friends. You won't be alone. This house just makes you remember sad things." I wouldn't answer. I'd just look out the window toward the table where Eleanor used to sit and mend my shirts. The sunlight was still golden, but it didn't feel warm anymore. I was beginning to understand. They didn't want to help me live better. They wanted me to fade away quietly. That day, I opened the closet to get my coat and noticed the drawer was too tidy, much more than I ever kept it. On top was a new stack of papers, property documents, copies of the house title. I had never put them there. A chill ran down my spine. "Dad, I just organized it for you, Rob said, appearing behind me, that smile plastered on like a mask. I nodded without saying anything, but I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake listening to the ticking of the clock, realizing that the house, once a refuge, was now a strange place where someone was putting their hands into every corner of my life. The next morning, I went to my usual coffee shop on the corner. The owner, Sal, looked at me and asked, "Haven't seen Mrs. Miller in a while. How's her health?" I didn't know what to say. I just answered softly, "She's gone." Sal sighed and poured me more coffee. "Then you take good care of your things, especially your papers. You never know with people these days." I gave a small smile, but inside I heard a little click, as if Eleanor was whispering to me, "Listen to him. He's warning you." That night, Rob sent me a text. "Dad, someone's coming by to see the house tomorrow. Just an appraisal. Don't worry." Don't worry. 3 words that worried me more than anything. I remembered my years as a teacher telling my students, the most dangerous thing is when a lie starts to call itself by a pretty name. Now, I was living inside that lesson. I opened the small drawer where Eleanor kept her letters. Among the old photos, I found a pale yellow envelope I had never seen before. The handwriting was hers, clear and firm. "If you're reading this letter, it means I'm gone. Remember, there are things I'm leaving behind that aren't just walls and a roof." I sat still for a long time, my heart racing. That letter felt like a warning from far away. And for the first time, I felt clearly that Eleanor was still here. Not in body, but in that intuition of someone who knew me better than I knew myself. That morning, while I was making coffee, I heard strange noises in the yard, the squeak of wheels, the slam of a door, laughter and unfamiliar voices. I went out onto the porch, and I froze. A small moving truck was parked in front of the gate. 2 men I didn't know were carrying new furniture into my house. A sofa, a huge television, boxes labeled Vanessa's Kitchen. Rob was walking behind them, keys in hand. He had the calm expression of someone who saw nothing out of place. "Dad, don't mind us," he said. "We decided to move in here for a while. Our house is being remodeled, and this way we'll be more comfortable." I looked at the chaos in the living room. The space where Eleanor used to put flowers was now occupied by cases of wine and high-heeled shoes. "And you didn't think you should have asked me first?" I asked, my voice rough. Vanessa chimed in with a light smile. "Oh, Dad, but this is Rob's house, isn't it?" She didn't need to ask. "Don't worry, I'll take care of redecorating everything, giving it a more modern feel." "Rob's house?" Those words echoed in my mind like metal hitting the floor. I watched as everything familiar was transformed. The photo of my wedding with Eleanor had been taken down and was leaning against a table. My old books were piled in a corner of the closet. "That's not necessary," I said calmly. "The house is fine as it is." Vanessa kept smiling. "Fine for you, maybe, but we prefer something more current. You have to get used to it, Dad." In the afternoon, I sat on the porch, watching them change the wallpaper. Rob sat next to me, crossing his legs on a chair, relaxed. "Dad, I was thinking, you should sell the back lot. The square footage is worth a fortune. It would be good for you. I can invest that money and make you a profit." I looked him straight in the eye. "That land isn't for sale, Rob. Your mother planted her flowers there. It's not about money, it's about memories." He let out a short laugh. "Dad, always with your memories. You can't live on those. It's a different era." I took a deep breath. "Maybe memories don't feed you, son, but without them, you stop being who you are." Rob looked away, yawned as if bored of hearing old stories. And then I understood. The distance between us wasn't measured in years, but in ambition and coldness. That night, while I reread Eleanor's letter, I heard laughter from the living room. Vanessa had invited friends over for dinner. The music was pounding, the wine was flowing, the table was a mess. In a corner, our wedding photo lay face down, covered in dust. I walked over, wiped the glass, and put it back in its place. "Forgive me, honey," I murmured. "I haven't been able to keep our house as it was." As I turned, I saw Rob in the doorway. The yellow light cast a strange contrast on his face, half shadow, half shine. "Dad, don't be like that," he said, in a tone that hid a warning. "Get some rest, okay? Don't meddle in my affairs anymore. All this is mine now, legally. I looked at him without responding. In his eyes there was no sun, only a stranger who saw me as an obstacle. And in that moment, I understood. Betrayal doesn't come from far away. It sprouts within the home, waiting for the day to bloom with poison. I left the house just as it started to rain. The cold drops hit my shoulders, soaking the fabric as if to remind me that I had, in fact, gotten old. 2 worn-out suitcases, one with clothes, the other with my notebooks, and a few photos of Eleanor, were all I had left after 40 years in that home. No one said goodbye, only the iron gate closing behind me with a hollow echo. I called a cab and sat in the back seat, looking out the fogged-up window. The city at night was still noisy, but to me, all the sounds were foreign, as if I were passing through someone else's life. The driver, a young man, asked me, "Where to, sir?" "East Pasadena," I replied at random, "the cheapest motel you can find." He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, hesitated for a moment, and didn't ask anything else. The motel was on a narrow alley with a yellowish streetlight that barely lit the sign. The air smelled of dampness and bleach. The clerk didn't even look up when she gave me the key. The room was small, with a creaking iron bed and stained walls like memories erased by the rain. I dropped the suitcases, took off my wet shoes, and sat by the window to watch the rain. For the first time in many years, I didn't hear Eleanor's laugh or footsteps in the kitchen or the smell of cinnamon coffee at dawn, just the constant tapping of water on the tin roof. I felt my heart empty, like a house dismantled brick by brick. I opened the second suitcase and took out the notebook Eleanor had given me. Brown leather cover, worn corners. Between its yellowed pages was a small piece of paper with her slanted handwriting. "If one day everything around you collapses, don't be afraid. They are only testing you to see how strong your heart still is." I barely smiled. Eleanor always knew where I would falter before I did. I placed the note on my chest and closed my eyes. Through the rain, I thought I heard her voice whispering to me, "Arthur, don't let them take your soul too. The house isn't walls. It's memory. It's a promise." I turned on the light, filled a plastic cup with tap water, and took a sip. The harsh taste brought me back to reality. On the table was an old newspaper. On the front page, an article about inheritance fraud and an elderly man dispossessed by his family. I read it with a coldness running through my body. Every line seemed to tell my own story. I looked out the window again. The streetlight cast my trembling, distorted shadow on the wall. I wondered if Eleanor was watching me now, an old man kicked out of his home, clutching broken memories. But then I shook my head and said quietly, "No, Arthur, this isn't how it ends. This is just the prelude to the lesson your son is about to learn, the same lesson Eleanor taught us both. True love never surrenders to greed." That night I slept in fits and starts. Outside, the rain didn't stop, and in my dreams, Eleanor was standing on the threshold of the old house, smiling and saying softly, "Come home," but this time, with courage, not with pain. The next morning, I woke to the dim light filtering through the damp curtain. The room's stale smell choked me. I made a packet of instant coffee from the corner store, but when I brought it to my lips, the bitter taste made me wince. It wasn't the cinnamon coffee Eleanor used to make. I put the cup down. I looked in the peeling mirror on the wall. There was another man. White hair, sunken eyes, trembling hands. A stranger. And yet I knew it was me, after losing my home. When the rain stopped, I went out. The air in Pasadena after the storm was cleaner. The leaves shone wet, and the pavement reflected the sunlight. I walked down the street I always walked. I went into Eleanor's favorite bakery. It had a new owner. The young woman at the counter didn't know who I was. I bought a small pastry, not out of hunger, but for an excuse to feel like I still belonged here. Sitting in the coffee shop across the street, I remembered something that didn't matter to me before. Eleanor always personally handled the house papers, the bank contracts. I used to joke, "You're as careful as if you're afraid I'll sell the house." She would laugh. "I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid someone will take advantage of you one day." I thought she was kidding then. Now I understood that Eleanor never said anything in vain. That thought pushed me to act. I took out my notebook and opened it to the last page she had written. The slanted handwriting said, If you see someone trying to touch our legacy, go see Harrison. Harrison. That name made me sit up straight. Mr. Harrison, the attorney who helped us buy the house, an upright, kind man who used to call Eleanor a woman of her word. I hadn't seen him in years, but I still remembered his office near the bus stop on Lake Avenue. I took a cab, my heart filled with a mix of fear and hope. The city noise, horns, voices sounded distant. I wondered if Rob had done something with the documents, if the will he showed me was a fake. When I arrived, the Harrison and Associates sign was still there, though faded. Inside, Harrison looked almost the same, except for a few more gray hairs. When he saw me, he looked up, surprised. "Arthur, it's been too long. Come in, sit down. And how is Eleanor?" I was speechless. He fell silent as I told him everything. His expression turned grave. Finally, he spoke slowly. "You've been trusting the will Rob showed you, haven't you? Well, I have never filed any document that leaves the entire estate to your son." The room seemed to tilt. I grabbed the arm of the chair. "What are you?" "I have the original right here. Eleanor distributed her assets differently. Let me show you." He opened his safe and took out a sealed envelope with Eleanor's signature. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first lines filled my eyes with tears. "I, Eleanor Miller, bequeath 70% of my estate to my husband Arthur Miller because he is the one who guards the memory of this house." Everything was spinning, but in the midst of the dizziness, I felt as if Eleanor was speaking to me from the wind. "See, I'm still here, and I left you the way back." I gripped the document. For the first time in months, I felt a new clarity. It wasn't just justice. It was the certainty that Eleanor was still guiding me, even from afar. I stayed silent for a long time in Mr. Harrison's small office. The air smelled of old paper, ink, and damp wood. The light coming through the window fell right on the original will, highlighting Eleanor's handwriting. Straight, elegant, and firm, like she was. "I, Eleanor Miller, bequeath 70% of my estate to my husband Arthur Miller, the remaining 30% to my son Robert on the condition that he cares for his father with respect and dignity." Every word was both a blow and a light. Eleanor had foreseen it. She knew the day might come when her own son would betray me, and she left me not just assets, but a wall to protect my honor. I ran my trembling fingers over the last line. "If this condition is not met, Robert's inheritance will be nullified." I looked up at Harrison. He nodded, his voice calm. "This is the original, with my seal. It has not been altered. I'm afraid, Arthur, that someone forged a will to take away your rights." I closed my eyes. In my mind, I saw Eleanor standing on the threshold, a cup of coffee in her hand and her calm smile. "You were always thinking ahead, Eleanor. You always knew I was too soft." Harrison slid the folder toward me. "You have two paths. Stay silent and live with this wound, or stand up, reclaim what is yours, and honor your wife's wishes." I sighed. "What do you think I should do? What would Eleanor do if she were here?" "Protect the truth." His words squeezed my heart. I looked at the will, at my wife's signature. I folded it carefully and put it in my inside pocket. "Harrison," I said quietly, "help me. Not for revenge, but so Eleanor can rest in peace." He nodded gravely. "You have my word. I will notify the court. We will open an investigation. We will need witnesses, evidence, and patience." I stood up and thanked him. As I left, the evening light touched my face. I didn't feel so heavy anymore. In my pocket, the will seemed to radiate warmth. I walked down the street, listening to the engines of the buses, the distant sound of traffic, the laughter. Life went on, as if no one had just lost everything, or just regained hope. Before turning onto the motel's street, I went into a coffee shop. The wind carried a scent of cinnamon. I ordered 2 cups, one for me, one for Eleanor, and placed the second one across from me. "See, honey," I whispered, "this isn't over. You protected me. Now it's my turn to keep my promise." I took a sip. The bitterness filled my mouth but warmed my chest. I knew I had just crossed the line between weakness and courage. That night, I opened my notebook and wrote my first entry since Eleanor died. "Today, I promised you that the truth will return to its place, not for money but for dignity, not for a house but to find myself again." I closed the notebook. In the silence, I heard the wind brush against the window, as if Eleanor were answering me. "Go, Arthur. I'm still here with you every step." 3 days later, I returned to Mr. Harrison's office. He was talking with a young woman, hair pulled back, a firm gaze, and a voice of steel. When she saw me enter, she stood up, and he introduced her. "Arthur, I'd like you to meet Valerie Orton, a civil investigator. She will help us clarify the forgery of the will." Valerie shook my hand with a slight but decisive smile. "A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Harrison has given me the basics. We'll need to handle this very carefully." I shook her hand. I felt a different kind of strength in her grip, far from the false handshakes of my own son. Harrison opened the folder on the table. The copy of the fake will Rob had used. Eleanor's signature was deformed, stiff, cold lines, without the softness of the woman I loved. Valerie tilted her head and examined it with a magnifying glass. 10 years in this job is enough to know this is a fake at first glance, but proving it in court takes time. We will request a handwriting analysis and file a formal complaint with the court. I nodded, my voice breaking with emotion. I don't want my son to end up in jail. I just want him to face the truth and his mother's memory. Valerie's expression softened. "I understand. But justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about reminding us that greed has consequences." Her words left me silent. I looked out the window. The midday sun fell on the dusty street and on my broken memories. For the first time in months, that light didn't hurt my eyes. We spent the afternoon signing documents, giving statements, and providing copies of the evidence. Valerie asked me for every detail. "Do you have any messages or recordings from your son?" "I have some texts," I replied, showing my phone. One said, "Dad, don't worry, I'll take care of everything. This house is mine now." Valerie smiled ironically. Sometimes the most careless words are the heaviest evidence. Before I left, she warned me. "We will work as fast as possible, but I need you to remain calm. They won't sit still when they find out we're investigating them." "I know," I replied. "But if they chose the path of lies, I will choose the path of silence and firmness. Eleanor didn't teach me to hate. She taught me to stand tall." Valerie smiled and spoke in a softer voice. "Do you know why I took this case? Because your story reminds me of my father. He died because he trusted the wrong person. I don't want to see another father lose his faith too." I didn't know what to say. I just put my hand on her shoulder, a father's gesture to a daughter I never had. That afternoon, as I left the building, it suddenly started to rain. I stood under the awning, watching the drops slide down the glass. In my pocket, the folded will felt like a talisman. I didn't feel alone anymore. For the first time, I wasn't facing the world by myself. I had allies. An old, honest lawyer, a brave young investigator, and the spirit of Eleanor, who had led me to the right place, the right people, and the right moment. I looked up at the rain and murmured, "Honey, I found someone to help me keep my promise. Now the truth has a voice." And through the sound of the downpour, I thought I heard a very quiet reply. "Go, Arthur. Justice is waiting, and you're not walking alone anymore." I didn't have to wait long. Just 3 days after filing the complaint, Rob called. It was early in the morning. I was in the small motel room, rereading Eleanor's letters. The phone was vibrating nonstop. My son's name was on the screen. A part of me wanted to reject the call, but my hand, almost instinctively, pressed answer. "Dad?" His voice sounded broken, rushed. "What did you do? The bank just informed me that the accounts are frozen. My lawyer says there's an investigation. Are you suing me?" I kept quiet. Outside, the rain was starting to fall. The tapping on the roof mixed with his agitated breathing. "You know, son," I said slowly, "sometimes justice arrives when you're forced to listen to your own silence." "Dad, don't talk in riddles," Rob shouted. "Do you know I need that money for an investment? Do you want me to go under? How could you betray your own son?" I closed my eyes. Betray. The word sounded like a bitter irony coming from him. I answered with a calm that surprised me. "I'm not betraying anyone. I'm only protecting what your mother entrusted to me. You were the one who broke the promise, Rob." There was a moment of silence on the other end. I heard his heavy breathing, rapid footsteps as if he were pacing the room. "Dad, who told you? You don't know anything. I just wanted to—" "You just wanted to keep everything," I interrupted. "But you forgot something. An inheritance isn't a prize, it's a test." He exhaled sharply. His tone changed, becoming softer. "Dad, listen to me. I just wanted to help you. I thought if everything was in my name, it would be easier. You're old. You don't need to worry about it." I let out a short, joyless laugh. "Old doesn't mean stupid, Rob, and loving you doesn't mean I'm blind." "Dad, what are you going to do?" "Nothing. I'm just going to let the truth speak for itself." Absolute silence. Then I heard a muffled sob. It could have been rage. It could have been fear. Finally, he murmured, trembling, "Dad, please, stop this. Mom wouldn't want to see us like this." I took a deep breath. "That's true. Your mother wouldn't want this. But you caused this. If you still remember anything she taught you, now is the time to show it." I paused, then said each word carefully. "I don't need money, or a house, or honor given by others. I just need my son to know how to bow his head when he's wrong." There was no answer, just the sound of the rain getting heavier. And on the line, the sound of a stifled cry. I said nothing more. I let the silence do its work. Before hanging up, I said something I never imagined I'd say to my own blood. "I'm not punishing you, Rob. You are punishing yourself. I haven't taken anything from you. I've only given you back something you lost. Your shame." I hung up and left the phone on the table. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The rain washed over the window pane, blurring the light from the street lamp. In that instant, I knew the real battle had begun. And this time, I wasn't fighting for me, but for Eleanor, and for the part of humanity that was still left in my son, whom, despite everything, I still couldn't stop loving. A week after that call, Valerie notified me. "The restraining order was approved by the court. You have the right to return to your house, Mr. Miller." I felt my chest tighten. 2 words, return home. They seemed light, but they weighed as much as a lifetime. That morning the sky was clear. I put on the blue shirt Eleanor loved so much and put the will in my breast pocket. Mr. Harrison met me in front of his office. With us were Valerie and 2 local police officers. There was no fanfare, no noise, just a small group moving in silence toward the place I used to call home. When the gray gate appeared at the end of the street, my heart began to pound. The house was still there, but something had changed. The walls, once cream-colored, were now a cold white. The bougainvillea vine that Eleanor had planted had been cut down, and in its place, a small sign read, "Property of Robert Miller." Valerie knocked on the door. No one answered. The next-door neighbor, an elderly woman, recognized me and exclaimed softly, "Mr. Miller, you're finally back." I nodded and replied, "I don't know if this can really be called coming back, ma'am." The door opened. Vanessa appeared. Her hair was a mess, dark circles under her eyes. She froze when she saw us. "Police, what's going on?" Valerie showed her the documents, her tone serene. "Court order. This house is under investigation. For now, the right of residency belongs to Mr. Arthur Miller." Vanessa's face went pale. "That's impossible. This is my husband's house. His mother left it to him." Harrison interrupted her firmly. "No, ma'am. Mrs. Eleanor Miller left the majority of the estate to her husband. We have the original will. Any other copy is a forgery." I didn't say a word. I just took one step inside. My legs were shaking. The air smelled of a strange perfume, recent paint, and an unfamiliar dampness. I ran my hand along the wall where Eleanor used to hang our wedding photo. The nail was still there, but the frame was gone. I touched the dust, and a chill ran down my spine. "I don't want to cause trouble," I said finally. "I just need to come inside one more time, to remember that I once had a home." Vanessa looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I glimpsed something in her eyes. Remorse or fear? I couldn't tell. I walked down the hall where Eleanor used to place her pots of chrysanthemums. Only water stains remained on the tiles. I stopped in the kitchen, where the aroma of cinnamon and coffee used to fill the mornings. Now, there was only silence. Valerie approached slowly. "You can stay, Mr. Miller. The police will guarantee your right to reside here until the process is over." I shook my head. No, I can't sleep in a house where Eleanor isn't here anymore. I just want to sit for a moment. I pulled out a chair and sat at the old wooden table. From my pocket, I took the photo of our wedding and placed it in the center. Eleanor smiled with that tenderness that seemed to light up everything she touched. "Honey," I whispered, "the house has changed so much, but I remember every brick, every crack, every paint stain, because in each one of them, there's a piece of you." I touched the glass of the frame, and it felt warm. I didn't know if it was from the sunlight coming through the window, or because Eleanor was still there, hidden in everything my heart couldn't let go of. Before I left, I told Valerie, "I'll be back tomorrow, not to reclaim a property, but to reclaim my memory." She nodded, understanding. As I left, I stopped and looked at the facade one last time. The golden light of sunset bathed the roof, as if purifying every lie. In the wind, I thought I heard Eleanor's voice, soft as a sigh. "You're back, Arthur. As for the rest, leave it to time." That night, I didn't go straight back to the motel. After leaving the house, I walked to the coffee shop on the corner where Eleanor and I used to sit in the early years of our marriage. The place had changed owners and even its name, but it still had the old wooden table under the awning. I sat down and ordered 2 cups of coffee, like always. One for me, one for Eleanor. The night breeze carried the smell of cinnamon and damp earth after the rain. I watched the steam rise from the cup in front of me, and for a moment I thought I saw a hand gently stirring the spoon. Maybe it was old age, or maybe Eleanor was still here, hidden in the simplest things. I took our wedding photo from my pocket and placed it on the table. In the yellow light of the street lamp, her face glowed, smiling as if she were looking at me through the steam. "Honey," I murmured, "I went back to our house today, not as a victor, but as someone picking up the pieces of broken memories." As I was about to leave, the owner, a short man with gray hair, approached. "Mr. Miller, right?" he asked. I was startled. "I recognize you," he continued. "Mrs. Eleanor used to come here every Friday afternoon. She always ordered 2 cups of coffee, one for her and one to wait for you. Even if you didn't come, she'd leave yours there until the coffee got cold." I couldn't answer. My throat closed up. The man searched under the counter and pulled out a faded yellow envelope, its edges darkened by time. "She asked me to keep this. She said if you ever came back, to give it to you personally." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in her familiar slanted handwriting. "My love, if I'm no longer by your side, don't let loneliness be the reason for your silence. The day may come when those we love hurt you. If that happens, don't seek revenge. Act with the serenity I always loved in you. The truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs someone to defend it." I folded the letter, and a tear fell on the last line. Eleanor had foreseen everything. She knew our son would weaken, knew I would hesitate, that I would choose silence over fighting. She left me not just property, but a map to keep walking. I put the letter in my breast pocket, right next to my heart, and in that moment, I knew I was no longer alone. As I stood up, the owner asked quietly, "Was the coffee bitter, Mr. Miller?" I smiled, wiping my tears. "Yes, bitter. But it's the kind of bitterness one needs to remember they can still feel." I left the cafe carrying that piece of paper as if I were carrying Eleanor's soul. The night sky over Pasadena was covered in clouds, but between them, I saw one small star twinkling. I knew it was Eleanor's way of telling me I was on the right path. That night, for the first time in many months, I slept in peace. And in my dreams, Eleanor was in front of me, a cup in her hand, saying softly, "Drink, Arthur. Today, the coffee is just right, to be truly savored." A week later, I returned to the house, this time without police or lawyers. I was carrying a basket of fruit and 2 cups of coffee, as if Eleanor were still waiting for me in the kitchen. The iron gate opened with a soft creak, less hostile than the last time. The house was strangely silent, only the wind filtered through the old bricks. I had just set the basket on the table when I heard a child's voice from the door. "Grandpa?" I turned and saw Chloe, Rob's daughter. She ran to me and hugged me tightly. Her long, dark hair, her bright eyes. They were identical to Eleanor's when she was young. "Daddy says you're sick. I asked Mom if I could come see you," she said cheerfully. I stroked her head, feeling my voice tremble. "Grandpa's fine, just a little old." Chloe smiled, showing the gaps where her baby teeth had been. "I miss you. Ever since Grandma died, nobody talks about her at home. But I still have the scarf she knitted for me. It smells like cinnamon flowers." We sat on the patio bench. "You still remember that smell?" I asked. "Yes. Every time I smell it, I think she's still here." "Do you think she hears me when I talk to her, Grandpa?" I looked at her, not knowing what to say. Finally, I whispered, "If you talk to her with all your heart, she'll hear you." Chloe tilted her head, thinking. "Then does she hear Daddy too?" Her question pierced me like a small, cold knife. "Maybe," I answered quietly, "but we don't always know how to respond to what we hear." She looked around. "Why doesn't Daddy come here anymore? This house is pretty." I smiled, a bitter taste in my mouth. Taste. Because sometimes people leave to learn how to remember. Chloe was quiet for a moment, then said, "Grandpa, Daddy's really sad. I heard him yelling on the phone. He says he hates you." I bowed my head. "Your daddy doesn't hate me. He's just scared." "Scared of what?" "Of looking in the mirror and seeing someone who hurt his family." The girl nodded with unexpected maturity. I took a small silver bracelet from my pocket, the gift Eleanor had bought in Santa Fe for Chloe. "This was for you. I'm giving it to you now." Chloe's eyes lit up. "I'll take care of it to remember Grandma, and to remember that you know how to pick out nice things too." I laughed, for the first time in months, a sincere laugh without bitterness. Before she left, Chloe turned and asked, "Grandpa, if Daddy forgets how to be a son, can I be his daughter?" I froze. I hugged her tightly. I don't need anyone to replace anyone, but if there's anyone in this world who makes me keep believing in family, it's you. She smiled radiantly, kissed my cheek, and ran off. I watched her go, feeling a warmth in my chest despite the wind. In the empty patio, I thought I heard Eleanor's soft laugh in a corner. "See, Arthur? I still left you a reason to smile." I began to understand that when a person is cornered, greed will find any way to save itself, even at the cost of shame. One morning, Valerie called me, her voice tense. "Mr. Miller, I need you to remain calm. Rob just filed a petition with the court alleging that you're suffering from dementia and lack legal capacity." I was silent for a few seconds before sighing. "I figured as much," I replied calmly. Valerie continued, "His goal is to temporarily nullify the will and have the judge declare you incompetent. In that case, your legal guardian would be your son." I sat down in my motel room chair. The morning light came in at an angle through the curtain, falling on Eleanor's letters spread out on the table. I picked one up and read a line I already knew by heart. "Don't let others decide if you are still capable of loving." Eleanor's words dissipated the rage that was boiling in my chest. At noon, Harrison arrived with a folder under his arm. "We will request an independent medical evaluation," he explained. "I've already contacted Dr. Ortega, a specialist in geriatric psychology. He will prove that your mind is clearer than those of these young schemers." I smiled sadly. "I'm not afraid of the tests, Harrison. I'm just afraid my son has gone too far to ever come back." The evaluation took place 3 days later in Dr. Ortega's office. He was a man in his 60s, calm, with a deep voice. We talked for almost an hour about my former students, my memories with Eleanor, the dates I still kept in my head. I answered everything slowly, clearly, without faltering. At the end, the doctor smiled. "Mr. Miller, if all the seniors I examine had a mind as clear as yours, I'd be out of a job." "Perhaps," I told him, "because I don't forget. I just remember what's worth remembering." When the report reached the court, Valerie read it to me out loud. Patient, Arthur Miller, no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment, logical reasoning, coherent language, and full legal capacity. I listened without joy. I just felt tired. What irony. A father needing a medical exam to prove to his own son that he was still sane. Could there be a greater humiliation? The hearing was brief in the local courthouse. Rob was there, dressed in a black suit, his face gaunt. His lawyer spoke of his concern for my mental health. I remained quiet, watching him. His gaze avoided mine. His hands were trembling slightly. When it was Valerie's turn, she stood up, her voice firm and clear. Your Honor, we have the medical report, as well as testimonies from neighbors and former colleagues. This man is not only lucid, but he is whole and coherent. If anyone here has perception problems, it is not Mr. Miller. Rob lowered his head. His face turned red. I looked at him without anger, only with infinite sadness. Leaving the courtroom, Dr. Ortega shook my hand and said quietly, You haven't lost your mind, Mr. Miller, but your son has lost something much more valuable, his heart. I nodded slowly. And when a man loses that, I replied, he can no longer tell what is right or who his father is. In the days after the hearing, the air grew heavier. Valerie warned me, Don't go out alone at night, Mr. Miller. I have a feeling they won't stop. I knew she was right. When greed is exposed, people can become more reckless than hunger. That night, I returned to the house. It was so quiet that every step down the hall echoed. I made a cup of coffee and sat by the window. Outside, the sky was a dark smear. The wind was blowing hard, a sign of the storm that was approaching. On the table, the evening paper had a story about another case of will forgery, a father dispossessed by his own daughter. I read the headline and saw myself in it, not in the details, but because I recognized the sickness of our time, people selling their conscience in exchange for comfort. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. An envelope was slipped underneath. I opened it. Inside was a photo of me walking with Chloe and a sentence written in black marker. Shut your mouth if you don't want to lose what you have left. I froze. A chill ran down my spine. I recognized that handwriting. It was Rob's. A part of me wanted to be furious, but another part just felt empty. When a son threatens his own father, there's no doubt left. The darkness has completely devoured him. I took one of Eleanor's letters, the second one she left me. If one day the world around you turns cruel, do not respond with cruelty. Respond with firmness, because the harder the wind blows, the deeper the roots hold on. I read it over and over. Then I turned on the lamp and wrote a note. Son, I received your message. If you think fear can silence me, you forget that I was the one who taught you to write with discipline, but to live with tenderness. And I'm still here to remind you. I folded the paper and put it in the drawer. I didn't send it. I knew the day would come when Rob would need to read it, when the last spark of dignity inside him woke up. That night the wind picked up, scattering the newspapers on the table. I heard the window rattling in its frame and the thunder booming in the distance, but instead of fear, I felt a deep calm. Maybe because, deep down, I knew Eleanor was still here, standing with me in the middle of the storm. I turned off the lights and left only one candle lit on the table. The small flame flickered, reflecting in our wedding photo, as if it were Eleanor's eyes watching me. I whispered, The wind can shake the tree, but it cannot rip out its roots. It's the same with a man. He can lose everything except his courage. I closed my eyes. Outside, the thunder roared, the rain pounded the roof, and I knew the storm wasn't just in the sky, but also inside those who had not yet learned to fear themselves. The morning of the final hearing, the sky was covered in a gray sheet, as if the dust of time had settled over everything. I put on my oldest suit, but also my cleanest, the jacket Eleanor had ironed for me for the last parent-teacher night before she died. In my breast pocket, I carried her first letter, like a talisman of calm. Valerie was waiting for me at the courthouse entrance. Her look was serious but full of confidence. Don't worry, Mr. Miller, she said. Today, the truth will speak for itself. I nodded. Outside, among the crowd, I recognized some neighbors. They didn't say anything, just gave me small gestures of support. Some sorrows don't need words. A single look is enough to understand. Inside, the courtroom wasn't large, but it was cold. Rob was on the opposite bench in an impeccable black suit, his face more sunken than the last time I saw him. When our eyes met, his darted to the floor. Vanessa wasn't there. I had heard she'd moved in with her mother, unable to stand the pressure. The judge entered. The bang of the gavel echoed in the silence. Rob's lawyer stood up, his voice harsh. Your Honor, we maintain that the will presented by the plaintiff is invalid, and that my client, Robert Miller, is the sole legitimate heir. His tone was metallic, cold, emotionless. Valerie stood up serenely. She didn't raise her voice. She spoke slowly, each word marked by conviction. Your Honor, here is the original will with Mr. Harrison's notary seal, along with the expert analysis of Mrs. Eleanor Miller's signature. It is all legal and authentic. Furthermore, we have the testimony of Dr. Ortega, who certified that Mr. Miller is completely lucid. The previous accusations are baseless. The judge nodded and called Rob to the stand. Do you have anything to say? He asked in a grave voice. Rob stood up, not daring to look at me. A few seconds passed before he murmured, I just wanted to keep what my mother left me. I never wanted to hurt my father. I stood up without waiting for permission. Your Honor, I said, I didn't come here to win. I came here to prove that there are things that cannot be forged, my wife's handwriting, and the bond between a father and his son. The entire room fell silent. I turned to Rob. You say your mother left you everything, but if you really believed that, why would you forge her signature? Are you that afraid of the truth? Rob looked up. His eyes were red. In them, I saw for an instant the boy who used to run home to show me his A in math. The judge tapped the gavel lightly. This hearing is concluded. The verdict will be delivered at a later date. As we left, Valerie said quietly, You did the right thing, Mr. Miller. I looked at the sky, still covered in clouds, and replied, I only did what Eleanor would have done. Tell the truth, and stay silent long enough for others to hear their own conscience. Behind me, Rob remained seated, alone. I didn't look back, but in the echo of my footsteps, I heard something break. It wasn't defeat. It was the last layer of pride from a son who was, finally, beginning to face himself. A week after the hearing, I received a small envelope from the mailman. It had no return address, just one word written in a hand I recognized immediately. Dad. I stood still for a moment before opening it. Inside was a sheet of paper folded in two and an old photograph. The three of us in the backyard, Rob as a child, Eleanor smiling, and me kneeling to tie his shoes. On the back, a faded sentence. The happiest day of my life. I unfolded the letter. The handwriting was clumsy, unsure, without the firmness of the man who once signed million-dollar contracts. Dad, I know I don't have the right to call you that anymore, but I still want to write to you. When I heard the verdict, I didn't feel anger, just empty. I dreamed of Mom. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me with sadness. I understood that I lost the most valuable thing, my father's trust. I kept reading, my hands shaking. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that my regret is real. Everything Mom left for you, keep it, because it belongs to you and to her. I only wish that one day, if you hear me knock on your door, you'll open it, not to be your son again, but for the chance to be a person again. I folded the letter. Tears fell on the edge of the paper. For the first time, I no longer felt resentment toward Rob, just a serene sadness, and that silent love of a father watching his son stumble. I called Valerie. When she finished reading it, she was quiet for a long time before saying, Sometimes, Mr. Miller, justice does its job with seals and documents, but forgiveness is another form of justice, one that doesn't need a courtroom. I smiled. I don't know if I can forgive him yet, Valerie, but I know I'm not angry anymore. That afternoon, I walked to the nearby park. The sun tinted everything gold. The wind carried the smell of damp earth, and the laughter of children echoed in the distance. I sat on a bench and placed the photo on my knee. Honey, I whispered, our boy is finally learning the first lesson you taught him. How to say, I'm sorry. A gentle breeze stirred the photograph, and for an instant, I thought I saw Eleanor's smile floating in the air. On the way home, I passed the old coffee shop and ordered 2 cups, as always. The second one remained untouched, but this time I placed Rob's letter next to it, not as a reproach, but so Eleanor could see that our son still has a chance to find himself. I took a sip. The coffee tasted bitter, but it left a sweetness at the end. Perhaps regret has that same taste, bitter on the tongue, but warm in the heart. I didn't see Rob immediately after receiving his letter. I needed time to listen to myself, and to make sure that when I looked at him again, there wasn't a trace of resentment left in me. But the meeting came sooner than I imagined. One morning, Valerie showed up at my door with an unusual expression. "Mr. Miller," she said, "Rob showed up at the police station this morning. He turned himself in and confessed to forging the will." I froze. He confessed? Willingly? Yes. He said he couldn't stand the nightmares of his mother looking at him in silence. If you confirm his good faith, the judge might reduce his sentence. I didn't know whether to be happy or sad. I sat in my chair and looked at the steaming cup of coffee in front of me. The cinnamon aroma brought back a sudden memory of Eleanor. She used to say, "Every lost soul can find the light if someone has the patience to wait for it." Maybe in the end she was right. The day Rob was released on bail, he looked like a different person. Thinner, with sunken eyes, but a softer gaze. He stopped a few feet away from me, not daring to get closer. "Dad." His voice trembled, small, like a frightened child's. "I don't know where to start." "Start with the truth," I replied. He lowered his head. "I was selfish. I thought having the house meant having success, but I didn't understand that by taking the house from you, I was also destroying my family." I listened in silence. I felt my heart, instead of hardening, begin to soften. "Dad," he continued, his voice breaking, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but if you could, even just a little, I'd like to see Chloe, to tell her that her father made a mistake." I took a step toward him and put my hand on his shoulder. For the first time in many years, I felt the distance between us was no longer a wall, but a shadow. "Rob," I said, "I'm not angry with you anymore. But forgiving isn't erasing the past. It's looking at it without trembling." He looked up. His eyes were full of tears. In them, I saw something shine that I thought was lost. True regret. "Thank you, Dad," he whispered. "If Mom were alive, I'd ask her forgiveness first." I looked at our wedding photo hanging on the wall and smiled tenderly. "She already heard you, son. Mothers always hear their children's apologies, no matter where they are." That afternoon, we went out to the garden where Eleanor used to grow her yellow chrysanthemums. Rob helped me turn the soil, in silence, but carefully. With every strike of the shovel, the earth exhaled the scent of dampness, of life. Then I understood. Redemption doesn't begin with words, but with the hands that return to plant what was once destroyed. And in the last rays of the sun, I thought I heard Eleanor's soft laugh. "You see, Arthur, in the end we still have a home." Time began to pass calmly after Rob received a reduced sentence. My son was released early on the condition that he perform community service for 2 years. I didn't call it punishment, I called it a chance for him to learn the value of giving again. For my part, every morning when I woke up and saw the house, brighter and more serene than ever, I understood that I also needed a new beginning. Not for me, but for others like me, fathers and mothers who had been forgotten. One afternoon, I gathered Valerie and Harrison. "I want to turn this house into a sanctuary for abandoned seniors," I told them. "I'll call it Eleanor's house." Harrison looked at me, surprised. "Are you sure, Arthur? This is your inheritance." I smiled. "That's exactly why it must stay alive. Eleanor didn't leave me this house to keep it, but to share it." And so, Eleanor's house was born. A small place with 6 rooms, a patio covered in new bougainvillea, the old wooden table, and the aroma of coffee every morning. The first to arrive was a widower whose son had sold his house. Then came a woman whose daughter-in-law had changed the locks on her. They arrived with stories as sad as mine, and every time they finished telling them, I would serve them a cup of coffee and say, "It's bitter, yes, but drink it. After the bitterness comes the warmth." Valerie helped me file the paperwork to register the support fund. "You know, Mr. Miller," she told me, "Eleanor's house isn't just a sanctuary. It's a reminder for an entire generation that true filial piety isn't measured in money, but in how we treat memory." I thanked her. I felt proud of Eleanor because even in her absence, she continued to inspire others to be better. Rob started coming by frequently. He taught the seniors how to use a smartphone. Sometimes he made coffee for everyone. One morning, I found him on the porch, alone, staring at his cup. "I miss Mom," he said quietly. "This smell is exactly like when she was alive." I just nodded. Nothing needed to be said. There are regrets that don't need words. In the afternoon, as the sun set over the patio, I walked down the hall, listening to the laughter from the neighboring rooms. An old man was telling stories. The women were laughing loudly. I stopped. The house was no longer a place of loneliness, but a home where souls were blooming again. On the wall, I hung a small sign. Eleanor's house, where memory becomes home. I looked at the letters and whispered, "Eleanor, we lost a son in the darkness, but we found the light in many hearts. Maybe that's how love remains forever." The following spring, Eleanor's house was overflowing with voices and laughter. The walls that once smelled of dampness were now covered with children's drawings, yellow chrysanthemums, smiling suns, and happy seniors. Rob helped me paint the gate, and Valerie stopped by every weekend to check the papers and bring pastries. It all seemed like a miracle. A place that was once a symbol of betrayal, now transformed into a refuge of forgiveness. One Sunday morning, Chloe arrived with her little brother Daniel. She had grown, wore her hair up, and had a new confidence in the way she spoke. As she entered the patio, she exclaimed, "Grandpa, this is the Eleanor's house Dad told me about. It's so much prettier than I imagined." Rob, behind her, smiled shyly. Since his repentance, he had changed. He spoke little, listened more, and the tenderness I missed so much had returned to his eyes. Chloe ran through the garden, greeting the seniors. Then she took my hand. "Grandpa, Dad says this place isn't just your house, but Mom's house too, right?" "That's right," I replied. "Your grandmother built it with love. I'm just helping that love keep growing." Little Daniel, 6 years old, looked around and asked innocently, "Grandpa, why is everyone here old but they laugh so much?" The question made everyone on the patio laugh. I knelt beside him and replied, "Because when you learn to forgive, you become young again. But when you hold on to resentment for a long time, you get old faster." Rob stood quietly, watching. I knew he was listening more than he was watching. I turned to him. "You see, son, dignity isn't measured by a judge's sentence, but in how we treat others after we have fallen." Rob nodded, his voice low but firm. "I understand, Dad. Losing money can be fixed. Losing honor can be rebuilt. But losing the trust of someone who loves you, that takes a lifetime to earn back." Chloe hugged her father's leg. "I'm proud of you, Dad. I tell my friends that my dad helps grandpas plant flowers." Rob hugged her, tears in his eyes. I watched them, feeling how, even though the scars remain, the wounds were finally beginning to close. In the afternoon, the whole family sat under the pergola covered in bougainvillea. I told the children stories about Eleanor, her laugh, her cups of cinnamon coffee, how the sunlight danced on the glass when she smiled. "Grandpa, do you think Grandma knows we're happy?" Chloe asked. "Of course she does," I replied. "The flowers in this garden are her way of smiling at us every day." As the sun began to set, Rob brought 3 cups of hot coffee, one for him, one for me, and one that remained empty in the center of the table. No one said anything, but we all knew who it belonged to. I raised my cup and spoke slowly. "We can't choose how the story begins, but we can choose how it ends. And if the ending is full of kindness, then it's also a new beginning." Chloe smiled, her eyes bright. "I'm going to remember that, Grandpa." I looked at her, and in her gaze, I saw what Eleanor used to call the light of honesty. And I understood finally that my true inheritance had begun, not written on paper, but in the hearts of those who would follow our path. On the last morning of spring, I woke up earlier than usual. The first rays of sun filtered through the bougainvillea, falling on the wooden patio table like soft golden threads. On the table, a cup of coffee was steaming, the aroma of cinnamon mixed with the warm air. I poured another cup and placed it across from me, in the spot where Eleanor always sits in my imagination after all these years. "Honey," I whispered, "our house is full of life again. There's laughter, the smell of fresh pastry, children running through the yard. I think you'd like to see it like this. Rob appeared behind me with a basket full of yellow chrysanthemums. He set it down and said quietly, "Chloe and I planted the flowers Mom loved. They've bloomed very quickly, Dad." I looked at him tenderly. "They bloomed quickly because they were planted with sincere regret, son." He lowered his head, smiling shyly, but genuinely. Inside the house, the residents of Eleanor's house were preparing breakfast, their cheerful voices mixed with the distant crow of a rooster. This home was no longer a refuge for loneliness, but a sanctuary of memory and kindness. I took the wedding photo of Eleanor and me. I carefully wiped the dust from the frame. The sunlight lit up her face, her sweet eyes, her calm smile. I touched the glass, and for a moment, I felt with absolute clarity that her hand was also reaching for mine, not cold, but warm and alive. "I made it, Eleanor," I murmured. "Our house is not only still standing, but it has learned to love again, with forgiveness." I closed my eyes and listened to the sounds of life around me, the laughter of children, spoons clinking against cups, sparrows singing on the roof. It all formed a soft melody, the music of peace after the storm. Rob brought 2 cups of coffee and sat across from me. We sat in silence. Between us there were no more reproaches, only the warm aroma of coffee and the quiet morning light. I looked at him and spoke slowly. "Son, life doesn't teach us not to make mistakes. It teaches us to get up after them. You did that." He nodded, tears running down his face, making no attempt to hide them. I looked up at the blue sky. In it, I thought I saw Eleanor, smiling. "I lost a wife," I said quietly, "but I found my true self, and my son. You see, honey? In the end, love always wins." And in that soft morning light, I felt clearly Eleanor's hand intertwined with mine, light, warm, and real. If this story moved you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thanks for listening.